The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. Mary Madeiras has spent her life telling stories. First through a successful career as a 3-time Emmy award-winning TV director, working on news, sports, and 7 top-rated daytime dramas, including General Hospital and Another World. And then she stepped into another kind of directing, when she began opening and reading the Akashic Records for individuals and corporations around the world, helping people step back and look at their lives from a wider perspective. Her book, The Akashic Way, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records, lays out what she believes is an accessible field of intelligence, a record of the soul's journey that can help us understand trauma, purpose, and why we're here. Looking at the books she chose for her 10 best list, one starts to see how she got there, the questions she wrestled with, the ideas she tested, and the stories that expanded her thinking. So today, we're going to be talking about both, the record she opens and the books that opened her. Mary Madeiras, welcome.
Thank you, Sandie. It's so good to be here. What fun.
Good to have you as well. So tell us a little bit about your relationship with books, because you said that it wasn't until you became an adult that you really started connecting with books.
Yes. My childhood at home was chaotic. And, alcoholic father, really not a lot of time for me. And I got lost in school. I loved school because it got me away from the chaos at home. But because of that, it was I'm from a working class family. They didn't read books. Reading was not encouraged. Plus it was noisy in the house. So 2 things happened. I immersed myself in school. And of course, school had its own set of, there was no room to read books in school really until I got older, like high school, where they required reading. And then I also watched films. And that was where my introduction to the power of storytelling began with watching films, because I would go run up to my room when everybody was arguing and screaming, and I would just watch movies. I'm from New York City, and I would just watch movies all night, one after another. And I just loved being immersed in these lives that were being depicted, that had meaning, that had messages, and it also looked like normal life to me, even though, of course, it wasn't. It was Hollywood. So I wasn't reading when I was young. And then when I got older, there was the required reading in high school. And, quite often, frankly, I grew up with nuns, and they were suggesting really tough books like Kafka, and we weren't ready for it. And so a lot of us were like, ew, and tried to get through it. But then when I left high school and I also moved back to the city, I had my own independence, and I would just go into bookstores, and my adult friends who were readers would say, have you ever read this? And I'd go, no. Have you ever read, for example, I know it's on the list, A Wrinkle in Time? I'm like, what is that? Oh, it's a children's book. And I'm like, I can't read a children's book. And they're like, why not? So I got lost in bookstores. I would be in bookstores for hours, picking up books and reading the intros, the forward, to find out sections of it, to see what it felt like. And that's how I played, I want to say, catch up with reading books. So the meaning of it, maybe it's good I started when I was older, because the ones that I chose always had meaning for me, and they triggered something. I wasn't just reading, and I usually wasn't reading like mysteries. I was reading, I loved fiction. And then when I got older, I loved metaphysical books, because my world was beginning to open up to that, to this idea that we're more than these human beings walking around in third dimension. And once my world opened up, then I was searching and looking for everything that I could, that had to do with the metaphysical world and the possibilities that exist outside of third dimension. So that was the role of books. And then since then, it's I'm pretty picky. It's interesting. I'm picky about I don't just pick up any book. I really need to know about it, about the author, what they're about,
Yeah.
you know. Mhm.
So, do you remember what triggered that awakening that
The
turned you
Awakening to
towards?
Metaphysical?
Yeah.
It was a book. And actually I had it here and then took it off the list. This was tough to do a list. It was a book called Jonathan by Bach, Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Yeah.
And, I think it was in high school, and it just opened I just remembered all of a sudden I had this awareness that there was much more to life that was really cool, because my life when I was little was kinda closed. It had boundaries to it in the trauma that I was immersed in. And the trauma wasn't physically hitting me or against me, but I was overlooked, but I was immersed in it. And so, uh, that book I just remembered feeling like, ooh, looking around going, there is more. There's more to this leaf. There's more to the ocean. There's more to life around me. That was how it started.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that book is consistently every year we look at, what were the most recommended books of the year. Same titles come up again and again, and
See?
that's always among them.
That's one of them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
So, how challenging or how easy was it for you to pick just 10?
Well, I went between what will be I didn't know what should be important to this day with you to bring forward, and then I had to release that, and that's just my own, wanting things to fit in with your platform, let's say. And I had to, like, relinquish that and just think about and look at what do I remember that had a positive effect on me? What do I remember about picking up that book?
Mm.
And reading it and coming away, what did I come away with kind of thing. So, it was hard because I had more, and then it became a little more challenging because I have found in my life that brilliant fiction writers that bring meaning to what they write, it's not just for entertainment, are my favorite.
Mm.
And I think that's also because comedy when I was little played a big role in my life. My parents fought a lot, yet they also laughed a lot, and I'm really grateful for that. So, I love brilliant comedic writing
Mm.
that makes a point, that has a point, that is a philosophy, that is underneath the comedy, there's a philosophy about something. I've always been attracted to that. Um, so that's how it was challenging and then it wasn't. Once I started putting the books down, I was like, "Yeah, this feels right." And I would keep revisiting. I'm sure that your other guests have done that. I kept revisiting my list because I didn't want the list to be ended. I was like, "Is this really it?" So that was
Yeah.
the only challenge.
It is such a hard job. People always ask me, "When are you gonna do yours?" Uh-uh. That's not going
Oh,
to
you haven't
happen.
done yours. Oh.
No, I do have my what I call Sandie's bookworms that I occasionally write about on the website, and, if I come across a book that really, you know, leaves an impression on me, I have to share it with everyone, and so I put, something about it, but I don't want to be hemmed in by just 10. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that it does feel like, uh, hemming in a little to have
Yeah.
to choose,
Yeah.
but then there'll just be another time where there'll be another 10.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. We may actually start revisiting people because a lot of people say, "Can I come back and do some more?"
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So let's start with your first book, Autobiography of a Yogi,
Mhm.
Paramahansa Yogananda, published in 1946. This one comes up again and again and
I'm
again.
sure it does.
Yeah.
It is one of
Mm.
the most I mean, read books. It's on everyone's I say that, it's on everyone's shelves. Um, so Interesting, when I had moved to California, I was working in television, and I went from New York to California. When I was in California, one of my dearest friends who was branching out into the metaphysical world herself with the Eckhart Tolles, the usual suspects, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and she talked to me about SRF and Paramahansa Yogananda. So, again, later in life, I'm a late bloomer. Um, and I was like, talk to me about Paramahansa. And she said, well, there's SRF, which is down on Sunset Boulevard, and the monks have services. You need to come. So I went there. I went to the shrine, and I was just pulled in. And I went right into the bookshop and got that book. And what I loved was was, first of all, what I loved and I was attracted to in this book was how it reads like a screenplay. It reads like a film. And it's just delightful. His experiences, his miracles that the different gurus he's run into, and all of his his journey here and there, and levitation and magic and all kinds of interesting things, and his responses to it. But he always puts it into perspective that we are source. The God is within us. And I grew up in a Catholic family, and I didn't really resonate with the teachings of the Catholic Church. I'll just put it that way. But I wasn't a rebel. But I just knew that when I grew up, I was going to go my own way. And it's interesting, the things that I was not comfortable with about the Catholic Church and its teachings were the things that, or I should say, the opposite of those things were being conveyed by Paramahansa. So the church had God up there in the clouds, separate, judging. We come in with sin, even, karma's not even spoken of. And I always had this sense of, probably I was coming into my own soul's journey is what I realize now. And as we come into know who we are, then we resonate with books like this. And so his teachings have been with me. I have most of his books. He's amazing. What he teaches is so it has no boundaries. It is the power of divine itself in each and every one of us and every living thing on this planet, which is exactly what gets downloaded for me and is in my book in the Akashic way, from the Akashic Records. So when I began to work in the Akashic Records, I was hearing things from the Akashic realm that were exactly right out of his book, and from his beliefs. So it very impactful book, and a book that I think, you can just return to and open up anywhere in the
Yeah.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever, I used to have I think it was like 20 CD set, and
Yes,
I think it was Ben Kingsley.
it was Ben
And
Kingsley, and I have it. Yes.
yes, and it's amazing to listen to.
Yes. And in fact, I want to go back and listen to that again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that happened with putting this list together was when I was, remembering these books, I was like, wait a minute, pulling it off the shelf or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to read this again. A couple of them I started rereading again. I wonder if anyone has said that to you.
And there was certain people who've said that they read the same book every year. And
Wow.
each time there's certain books, and each time they find something different in it.
Yeah, I'm not
Um,
surprised. Yeah.
yeah.
That's the power of writing. Yep.
Yeah. Book number 2, Radical Passion, Sacred Love and Wisdom in Action, Andrew Harvey, published in 2012.
Andrew Harvey. He's an amazing, amazing mystic among us. I cannot remember how I was introduced to Andrew Harvey and who he was. But my favorite part of Radical Passion is that it solved a dilemma for me. I cry for humanity. I truly do. And I never have since I was little understood anyone having hatred towards someone else and harming them. And when I was little, I got made fun of for thinking that everyone was good. And I almost went the other way from that, away from that, but I held on to it because it's part of who I am. And so, Andrew Harvey connects up the divine with, especially Radical Passion. Just think of those words. I mean, he also coined the phrase sacred activism. And those two words are amazing to me. And his idea is, of course, and what he's saying is that the time now in in this transition that the planet is going through into the new earth, that our time to sit in meditation on, I think he might even said this, on mountaintops and pray for the world, that's fine, but we're past that. Now we have to be warriors. We have to have that radical passion. We also have to come to that to those actions in a balanced way. So we have to balance ourselves, connect up with the divine and the divine in us. And of course, the most important thing to him that he emphasizes is the power of divine mother and the divine feminine. And that the divine feminine is what is absolutely critical right now for rebalancing our earth. And I believe that also. So that's what's in there. I mean, it's just when I was reading that, I remembered this, it was reactivating something that I already had inside me. And it was nice to see someone who I respect saying the things and that I was already thinking we should be able to do this. How come we can't do this? And then he talks about, you know, in his books, he talks about how to do this, creating cells of grace. But he says, identify what breaks your heart. And then, because we have plenty to break our hearts in today's world, identify what breaks your heart. And then when you know the thing that breaks your heart the most, get off your butt and do something about it. And that's what's needed right now. And it is radical passion, and it's the passion for love, the passion for co-creating again in love, with love at the center of everything. And in the past, that sounded like pie in the sky, but it's not. It's really all we've got right now. And I think that's what he's still doing this work on behalf of that.
Have you seen his new book, The Magdalene Revolution?
No, I haven't. Well, I looked it up and it wasn't released yet when I first went to Amazon. So, I haven't read it yet. Have you read it?
Yeah, I interviewed him just last week. That's going, I think we're going to broadcast that in the next week or two.
Oh,
It's,
wonderful.
yeah, it's, yeah,
And,
definitely a book of
also
its time.
his journey, the one that what does he have, 42 books now, 43, somewhere in there?
Something like that.
The book that he wrote also about the dark night of his soul when he was following Mother Mira for 13 years as his guru. Um, and how brave and courageous of him to write that book about how his world crumbled because he fell in love with a man and Mother Mira said, "Oh no, not allowed." Um, and who knows? There may be a lot of people going through this right now who have been following Deepak Chopra and are concerned about, when you really believe in somebody like that and you're following them, he's brought such wonderful stuff to the world. And then this happens. I'm sure people are very confused. And so, I think this may be Deepak's dark night of his soul. Who knows? But I love that Andrew is forthright and courageous enough to share aspects of his life the way he does. I think he's a true mystic. I
Yes.
just love him. I'm going to be looking for that interview that you did.
I have a theory. Working in the spiritual arena, you come across this same issue over and over and over again. Revered teachers who, people say they've fallen from grace.
Right.
And, we can all look at it and we can all point fingers and we can say they're just human. But I also have a little theory that I play with that, you know what? I sometimes think that they are meant to do that, to fall from grace so that we can learn about discernment and we can learn that, it's the message that's important, not the messenger.
I could not agree with you more. And the Akashic Records show this. So in other words, his role is a bigger role than just the spiritual leader up until now. Same thing for because Andrew Harvey, coming out of the Mother Mira time period, discovered the divine feminine, He discovered Mother Mary and the power of divine feminine out of that time period. So look what happened. So who
Yes.
knows where Deepak will go? But yes, it has everybody thinking of things in different ways. And how could you not then be thinking about your own self and your own belief systems?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
I
so
mean,
agree. So
you know,
that's his role. Hmm.
we're not perfect, so why would we expect someone else to be?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
So book number 3, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, Joseph Murphy, published in 1963.
Yeah. That was a book that a really dear friend of mine just handed to me one day. And handed to me and my wife Christine, and we were already following going to um Esther Hicks Abraham workshops. We were doing that, and we were following the usual suspects, I like to say. And this book was like, we would sit and we would every night we would just read chapters to each other about this. This was before I became even more opened up, I'll say, and before I expanded even more in my consciousness, in the consciousness of myself or my higher self. So it's interesting because when I look back at this book, there are some things that he's talking about that I'm like, well, I also know I can add to it. So the records add more information, the divine realm, to what he's already done, which is, the subconscious is so powerful, but it's not so powerful that we can't work with it. And
Mm.
this book also was different. Most people I know didn't know about this book. And it was different than what psychology was teaching about um, the subconscious mind. You know, the power of your beliefs. It does talk about repetition a lot, but you know, I'm trying to remember here. Yeah, imagine and feel it as if it's already real. But these are concepts, when you think of the time the book was written, it was later that we were hearing more about that. Think
Yeah.
it and it is so.
Yeah.
So I feel this book was pre-paving for me. Um, Obviously what was already kind of it was an untapped part of me. And it was pre-paving it because I remembered both of us were just so attached to this book. We had it like, it was one of those books next to you at bedside, and it would just be like, let's just open up and see what he says about this or that or that. So that was, I don't know. Do you know that book?
I've never heard of that book.
Yeah.
First time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's the power of the subconscious and the fact that the subconscious is related to our thoughts, and that our thoughts can affect our subconscious, which is more in line with what Dr. Bruce Lipton speaks of when he speaks of the subconscious, that when we have subconscious patterns that maybe we're not happy about, Lipton says you can record over them. But the Akashic realm talks about even a more powerful concept, which is we can mine, mine, the energy of those subconscious patterns. So we can mine them and they become assets. They become power points, I'll say, in our lives. It's very powerful. So it's almost like Murphy stopped before that part. And then when I started to study the Akashic Records and work in the Akashic Records, I discovered, even more to the subconscious mind.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after we've finished talking about your list, because that's really interesting. But book number 4, Lost Horizon, James Hilton, and that was
Yeah.
published in 1933.
Yeah. It's an old book, right?
Yeah.
Um, okay, Shangri-La. We've all heard that word. So that book was so impactful for me because it was at a time in my life when I was working at um, CBS News in New York, and I was an associate director. And there was a man who was a new executive producer, and there was a new show that I was the associate director on with a director that he brought in from Hollywood. And it was the first time that CBS did a live audience in the morning. It was with Mariette Hartley, the actress. And what happened was on like a Friday, he fired the director and called me and said, "You're up. You're going to do the last." We were doing rehearsals, and there was a lot riding on the show because it was the first time CBS Network had had a show that had entertainment in the morning, not just news. It was an experimental show, and it was national, so it was going out to the whole country. Well, that book and that character, the idea of this man who winds up finding this place, and what the most important part of Lost Horizon for me, most impactful part, is here's this guy, and he's an explorer, writer, I forget what he was, the Conway guy, and he winds up in this place in the middle of the Himalayas. It's like freezing below zero, plane goes down, and he winds up in this place that opens up to this amazing place that's warm. It's based on love. It's based on the culture there lives. The guy says, one concept, be kind. And then we come to find out that he was actually called there. It wasn't random. It wasn't an accident that he wound up there. It was his calling because he was really going to be the next Lama, and he didn't know it. And so I was being called to do something that, especially women at that time, for me as a director, female directors, I was the second woman to ever direct at CBS News. And so this man calling me forward and saying, "You're going to do the last rehearsals, and I don't know what I'm doing yet." And he wound up hiring me as the director, putting me in as the director. So it was such good timing with Lost Horizon, because the concepts of Lost Horizon, the idea that this utopia called Shangri-La actually exists in each and every one of us. And I believe that to be true. I love that idea. And that sometimes, or probably all the time, when we're being called to something, it's not random. We're being called to something because somebody is seeing that in us. Somebody's seeing a part of us that maybe we're not seeing in the moment. And I had to, that whole weekend, I was sick to my stomach. I was so scared to be doing this, but I kept hearing a voice saying, "Mary, you already know all of this. You already know it." And that was the same for this character in Lost Horizon. He already knew that the world should just be kind, and that love is really at the center of everything. He knew it. He didn't get along with people around him. All the brilliant people that were around him, they couldn't figure him out. Even his own, his colleagues couldn't figure him out. And I've always felt that way. I've always felt like I didn't fit in with those around me, because I felt like we should stop and really look at what's real, which is love.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So book number 5 is one that you said had a deeply profound impact on you, triggering a sense of knowing on a new level. And it is I Remember Union, the story of Mary Magdalena by Flo Ivia Magdalena, published in 1992.
Yes. So that book was brought to me because I was invited to write a screenplay from that book. And I remembered the moment I held the book in my hands, I felt a vibration coming from the book. And I think this is true too. People who have been around the sacred scrolls, sacred texts, you can feel something.
Yeah.
I did with this book. So I was reading it, and I wasn't reading it thinking screenplay, film. I was reading it, and I just began to transform. The author has been channeling, the whole book is not channelings, but mostly it's channeling from Mary herself. And the information that Mary brings through I was resonating with it. Now, maybe I had a past life at that time, but I was resonating as I read it. I knew that what was being said was true. And it's pretty, it's different information than what we're used to. Although a lot of people who are channeling Mary Magdalene are now hearing, and I'm happy to hear this, they're hearing Mary is saying the same thing through other people.
Yes.
That Jesus, that she healed him, that he did come off the cross, but she alchemized his cells back to homeostasis, and that they lived on. And she went to, he went to India to teach, and she went to France. And then they met back up when maybe he was 70. So of course that is, I mean, think about that today. That's radical. I mean, so it's against what's in the Bible in a sense, because she was portrayed as a prostitute, as a whore. And she was anything but that. She was from the lineage of Isis. She learned about the powerful sacred feminine, and it all got covered up by the patriarchy in years to come, to this day. And so, to say profound, the other profound part of this book for me is that when I was writing it, I didn't think the message is important to get out there. And I didn't want the screenplay to be a biblical story, because that's niche. So I wrote it, and I brought a colleague of mine that's a writer, because she knows history, Vatican history. And I created a modern storyline with the characters that were the aspects of Mary, Jesus, and Judas. And the Vatican's a big part of this. And as I was writing, when I was writing, there were moments where there were very magical moments that happened for me. And one was that Mary came through me. I felt her. I was writing a scene, and the scene began to write itself. It's a profound ending. And I was writing the ending scene, and I was just bawling, crying. And I just said out loud, "Mary, is this you? You're here." I felt her come through me. So that book triggered all of that. And it was really triggering more of remembering in me of my probably relationship, if not with Mary, with the truth that Mary is speaking. That no one could talk me out of it right now, you know.
Yeah.
Very profound.
Yeah, I understand that. I read that book some years ago, and yeah, very powerful.
Isn't it? I know.
Yeah.
And the role of Judas, that, Judas didn't want to do what he was doing, but he knew it was part of the divine design.
Yeah.
So, so I'm working with Dia on this, and that screenplay is.
Oh, you're still working on it?
The screenplay is complete, but it's very close. It's with a distribution company, and it's very, very close to finding its director and becoming manifest. So we need this message. It's a beautiful story, and it's a story about a nun who uncovers this truth that was in the book.
Oh, can't wait to read it, hear
Yeah.
it, see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's exciting.
Yeah. And there's so much, emerging about the Magdalene now. I mean, Andrew Harvey was talking about, the recently, what did he call it? The companion, something about the companion, a scroll that was found relatively recently, and the information that it had about Mary.
About their relationship.
Yeah.
Yep. And we have the beauty of their relationship. I pulled it right out of Flo's book into the dialogue was just beyond physical.
Yeah.
A love so deep that it transcended physical.
Yeah.
It wasn't even any need for physical, because it transcended that. And that is the power of divine love. It is that powerful.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hear. I signed up and then couldn't do it when Andrew was doing that. He had a free webinar seminar on that book, the recent book. And I saw something about the discovery of another scroll, because there is a gospel that Mary wrote, but it's incomplete. What they found is incomplete.
Yeah.
Because we were working with that as well. But to think about thousands of years, Mary predicted this too, that there would be 2,000 years of pretty much what we've been going through. And that in 2,000 years from her time, we would remember who we are. And I do believe that's what's happening now.
Absolutely. And
Right?
that's why I think your script will make it, because the time is right.
The time is right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so
absolutely.
too.
Mm.
Good.
So, book number 6, I love this one. The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel, How They Communicate, Discoveries from a Secret World by Peter Wollobin, published in 2015.
Yeah, I know. It feels like a book that would have been older than 2015. But for me, it just I felt when I read it, like, you ever read books and you go while you're reading them, "Yes, I knew it. I knew it. I
Yeah.
knew it."
Yeah.
Because I have been so intrigued by nature, and I have felt for a long time when I look at a leaf, when I look at anything, even dirt, that it has a life force in it. I've always felt that, never really talked about it that much. And then here he is talking about this entire ecosystem that is a mirror of how we should be living as a humanity. Especially the idea of the trees that are different kinds of trees, and that they help each other.
Yeah.
They feed each other. They work in community. Um, they sacrifice for each other.
They
Um,
heal each other, don't they?
yes. And I recently opened the records of, I can open the records of, well, we'll talk about it, but a lot of different things in life. And I opened the Akashic Records of trees and asked them, in their imprint in the divine realm, can you help us with the pollution that's in the air? And I was specifically asking about chemtrails and the chemicals that are going into our soils and coming down. And they said that the trees spoke, and they said that they are transmuting that. Anything that is harmful chemicals, they can transmute it, quantumly transmute it into not being harmful, and they're still okay. That's how powerful they are. They're like the most powerful things on our planet, beings on our planet. And he just tapped into it. Like, what, imagine being him and doing all of that and being that kind of person. How
Mm.
lucky is he?
I tried to get
So,
an interview with him once, but it was almost impossible.
really,
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
a documentary that he's in. Well, it's probably many. I recently saw him in a documentary. And I just want more of him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Back in the early 2000s, I think I read The Secret Life of Plants, that came out in the 80s, and that was such an eye opener. About
Did that have to do with, plants responding to
yes,
noise, negative energy,
yes,
harmful, yeah,
yeah,
and then, of course, and then years later, we had Dr. Emoto talking about the water,
yeah.
and
Mm.
so, there we have proof that that there's an essence and a living, breathing essence to everything that's around us. So why can't we communicate with it, and why can't it communicate to us? I recently had a client, and what came through her records was a question, do you talk to trees? And she said, as a matter of fact, I do. And her little 2-year-old, when they go on walks, she has them address the branch of a tree and say, "Hello, tree, how are you?" Right? But she said, "Yeah," and the records asked, "Do you hear back?" And she said, "I do." Well, a lot of people aren't gonna talk about that, but, that's an untapped resource, and I think that's his point.
Yeah. In my village where I live, it's quite an ancient village in England, and there's a little group of 4 trees. They create this. When they're
See?
fully in bloom, it's like a little cave that you can go into. And every time I pass them walking the dog, I always talk to them. I don't think I've heard them talk back, but I always talk to them.
That's great, but if you just stop and listen, you'll hear something that's not your own thought, and most likely that will be the tree.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Who was it? The actor James. He was in The Magnificent Seven, And he, people used to ridicule him because he used to talk about sitting on the ground with his back against a tree, and he would communicate with the trees, and everyone was like, this guy's
Thought he
lost
was
it.
crazy.
James, can't think of his name. But yes, he talked to trees all the time. Good for him.
And I think it's great that he talked about talking to the trees,
Yeah.
because a lot of people won't
James
say that.
Coburn. James Coburn. Yeah.
Oh, he did do that. It was James Coburn? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
It's cool.
I love hearing that.
So
Wow.
book number 7, Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear, Elizabeth Gilbert, published in 2015.
That's such a fast read. So again, this coincides with what I know working in the Akashic realm. Same stuff. That, ideas, inventions, ideas, that they exist in the ethers first. And of course, we being, as Tolle talks about, the collective ego conscious, the ego conscious is a little tricky monster. It has us thinking, oh, that's my idea. That was me. I. And it's like, no. And she talks about it being floating around the ethers as an essence, whatever it is, whatever form it is in. And it's looking for its match because it wants to become manifest.
Yes.
And I always think of Harry Potter and Rowling and how, she wasn't sitting there going, I'm going to get a franchise and make all this billions of dollars, which she wound up doing probably. But she loved her children and had this need, and she was down and out financially, and it was floating around, and it just went, it's you. And what is so funny and cute in Elizabeth Gilbert's belief and in her book is how she says that when an essence of an idea chooses us, it will be in the form of, wow, I had this idea. It could be a dream. It could be we're walking down the street and boom, we get something. We don't know where it came from. Well, now we do. And then if we run with it, if we do something about it, great, because it wants to become manifest. But sometimes, how often do we get something and it's a great idea and we might start writing it out and then we put it on the shelf for a later day and we go, oh, well, not now. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And she describes the essence as like it's sitting in the corner filing its nails, waiting for us to pick it back up again. And if we don't, it goes back to the ethers and it finds its match. And then when we see it manifested, we go, they stole my idea, which I think is so funny. But isn't this true? Like it resonated with me because I've had this happen when I used to work with actors, which was my favorite part of directing daytime dramas. I would have these ideas. I'd be on the set with them and something would come up on how to do a scene a different way. And I would just say it and never failed that the more seasoned actors would say to me, wow, let's try that. Where'd you get that idea? And I would just wave off and go, I don't know, it came in. And I wouldn't even think about what I was saying. It did come in.
Yeah.
But there has to be a match to something about us in order for the co-creation to happen.
Yeah.
So that's why I love Elizabeth Gilbert's book.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I can attest to that because that's exactly how this book club came in. And when they come in, they actually come in fully formed. It's like you see
Yeah.
the whole picture.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? You see the whole picture. And then I use the term like reverse engineer. And then if we're the ones that are going to carry it forward, we have to reverse engineer
Yeah.
to how we get to what we saw. And I guess that's our human part in this. Otherwise that wouldn't be happening. And so, it's an interesting phenomena. I think it's a phenomena that this stuff comes in, which
Yeah.
means then instead of it being we're walking around and something comes in, we can ask for it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
It's
we're used to,
floating up there.
yeah. So there had to be something about you that was, there had to be something in you that was a match to that for the book club that came in. or it wouldn't have chosen you.
Yeah, and at the moment that it came in is I was asking for a solution to something.
Oh,
And
I love
it
it.
dropped in, but I did take a year, and I kept saying no. But thinking about what she said about sitting in the corner filing its nails, I would turn around and I'd almost see it. It's like on my shoulder, as if it was following me around. Until
Really?
finally I said, "Okay, I'll do it."
Oh, see that? I love that.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. That is really cool. There's so much more to life than we realize.
there certainly is.
It's fun.
So, book number 8, A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. See, we're talking about exactly the same thing. Eckhart Tolle,
Yeah.
2008.
You know, the Akashic realm refers to him as an ascended master, and I absolutely, absolutely get it. Well, New Earth was very impactful when it came out, wasn't it? Was that the book that they did on Oprah and they did chapter by chapter? Yeah, we followed along with that as well. Yeah. So the big thing that resonated for me in A New Earth was everything he says about the ego and the role of the ego and its hold on us and how it can take hold and becoming familiar enough with it to be able to recognize when it is the ego. Because the ego is not it's just deeper than we think. Or maybe deeper is not the right word, but it's certainly um it has more texture to it than we at least than I thought before I read that book. So that was the big, and our purpose. And then when he talks about the pain body too, that who cannot relate to that? And the role of the pain body, um, and the meaning of it. I think that I think he is receiving from the divine realm constantly. And I think this book is like an emanation from that. Um, but the main thing for me it was the pain body and the ego that really struck me as I felt like I learned something. And what's interesting is that after I was kind of receiving what he was talking about with the ego and the role of ego, then when I moved, again, it was preparing me. It was when I moved into working in the Records. The Akashic Records, I have 2 chapters in my book about the ego that was downloaded from the Akashic Records themselves.
Wow.
So I could not have understood what the Akashic Records were saying about ego and the trickery of the ego had I not read A New Earth and known about what and I think that's what's really nice about impactful about books is that books like this is that you read them and you don't know in the moment, you resonate, it's interesting, you're pulled in. You might go, "Wow, I never thought of that." You're in awe of something and then you finish and you put it away. And then years later, something is going on in your life and you go, "Oh god, I already know this." And I think that's what's great about people like Eckhart and
Yeah.
his works. Yeah.
Yeah. Book number 9, I've never heard of. Skinny Legs and All, a novel. Tom Robbins, 1995.
Well, Tom Robbins, I'm forgetting the other book that he wrote, the famous one that was made into a movie. Mm. Um, and so I found Tom Robbins just perusing books in bookstores, little bookstores in New York City, and I immediately was drawn in by his use of comedy and he's a brilliant writer, and his use of it's not satire, but comical analogy, like he was like, for example, in this book, he describes in one chapter, one of the main characters has a limp, a young guy. He has a limp from some injury, but he loves to dance. And of course, first of all, having this guy that has a limp and he loves to dance, that would be Tom Robbins writing that. But he described him when you would see him, it was like he was a monkey juggling razor blades, a monkey on roller skates juggling I'm gonna get this right. A monkey on roller skates juggling razor blades during a hurricane. So he takes a moment, and then, but not just for the sake of the comical part of it. It feeds immediately into the character. You know that that's the character. And in this book, what I liked about this book is many things, but the comedy, of course, but also it's about things in life. He's a philosopher, Tom Robbins, even though he writes fiction that's out of this world. One of his books is the story of life inside a pack of Camel cigarettes. Seriously. But when you go on the ride with him on the journey, you're brought into the world of wonderful characters that are conveying, obviously, what he thinks about life. And this one relates to, at that time, the Middle East crisis. Of course, now we're still in a Middle East crisis, but, it ends up in this restaurant in New York City that's, I think, co-owned by an Arab and an Israeli, and there's a lot of confusion and chaos, but there's other characters that wind up traveling there. And then there's a whole set of inanimate objects that are characters, and they're on this quest to get to New York City, and everything converges. And of course, there are characters that are very interesting. The main character is interesting. A woman finding her way as an artist, an overbearing husband, and she gets rid of him. So they're wonderful. It's wonderful messages about what we should be doing in life for ourselves and how to be powerful in ourselves. And then, but it's not out front. It's not hitting you over the head. It's not disguised, but it's underneath this crazy set of characters. And, the inanimate objects are like a spoon, a dirty sock, a can of beans. And, the whole thing ends with the can of beans exploding in the restaurant, which the chaos actually brings everybody into balance again. So he's using inanimate objects. And for me, inanimate objects, I don't know why, but I could write forever to inanimate objects. I just love putting personalities into things that I see. I've been doing that since I was a kid. I would take salt and pepper shakers and they'd be characters.
Mm.
And when Pee Wee Herman was big, and he had his show Pee Wee's Playhouse, I actually watched every one of them on Saturday morning, and I loved the characters that he had. And he had a chair that spoke named Cherry. He had inanimate objects, and he was teaching children, about things in life and how to be good to each other and things like that. So I watched that, and then I even went as far as I bought the little furniture from his show and had it in my apartment in New York. And my friends would come. This is when I was working at CBS News. And they'd come and I'd go to get a glass of wine. They'd be like, "What is that? Is that?" I'm like, "That's Cherry from Pee Wee Herman." So inanimate objects and comedy and being light and using lightness to get us through tough times has always been my choice. So I look for writers like that.
Yeah.
And Tom Robbins is one of them. So is the guy who wrote Garp, John Irving. I love his writing. I read his books, and I like that because when we can look at the lightness that exists in our lives and the truth of the lightness, it's sort of like it's a nice entry into then experiencing the deeper meaning of things for me. And so I always search for those kinds of writers. And I haven't found a Tom Robbins, and he doesn't write anymore really, but I haven't found somebody like him.
One-offs.
Yeah.
Like him. Yeah. Yeah. So the last book on your list, A Wrinkle in Time, Madeleine L'Engle, 1962.
Madeleine L'Engle. Love that book.
Read it as an adult, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And that was when one of my friends said, do you know Wrinkle in Time? And I went, no. And she was like, oh my God, it's the best children's book. And then, and then I read it and then, and loved it. And what I loved was what was the concept of multi-dimensional living, going to another dimension. And then the idea that, here's this young girl and she's saving her father, goes with her brother, and they meet all these characters. But it's love. It's about love. But it's about fantasy as well. Well, not now, is it? Because the idea of taking 2 points and putting them together is quantum physics. It's the center point of everything. It's also what the Akashic field is about. It's what the quantum field is about. It's what Dr. Joe Dispenza speaks about. It's all the same, and now it's being shown to us or proved. I didn't need proof, but it's being proved through science that this exists. So here was Madeline L'Engle. Where did she get that from, right? I loved that book so much that I actually saw that I was living in New York, back in New York City, and she was going to be at a Barnes and Noble speaking about that book, to children. And so, you bet, I stopped everything and I went to hear her speak. And one of the children, wonderful kids, one of the children asked her, how do you decide what your characters are going to say and do? And she said, I don't. She said, they just tell me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I always remembered that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. Now,
Many writers know that.
in A Wrinkle in Time, when it was made into a film, it didn't work. It didn't work. Some books just are not meant to be made into films.
No, they're not. Well, that is your 10 best list.
That's my list.
Now, I want to talk about your book, The Akashic Way, Living Through the Lens of the Akashic Records. I want to know, how did someone directing General Hospital end up working with the Akashic Records?
Well, as probably you already know by now from what we've talked about, my path was already opening up to things that were beyond what I could really touch, see, and feel. I'll say that. We could say metaphysical. So it was already happening while I was working in television. And I was having fun in television. I loved it. I love working with actors, and I love directing. And I was the director that came along and upset the apple cart by being kind to everybody. Because in the industry, you're supposed to be tough and hard, and if you're not, then you're not good. And I refused to do that. So I was that kind of director. And I think what probably, in retrospect, what I think happened was I had already directed 7 soap operas. And when I was on General Hospital and I was a contract director, all of a sudden, my world changed, like Andrew Harvey's when he was following Mother Mira. And there was a change where they didn't renew my contract. That had never happened to me all the years I'd been working with contracts and stuff. Never. And so it wasn't really explained why the change was happening. So I went to all the actors and I thought, well, I asked them, is there something I can do better? Did I miss something? How can I be a better director? They thought I was joking. The lead actors on General Hospital who played Luke and Laura, they were like, what do you mean you're leaving? You're joking? And I went, no, I'm not being renewed. And they said, you're one of the best directors we've ever had. And I went, and that's it. That's all I needed to hear from the actors. So needless to say, my world dropped out under me, because that had been my whole life for 25 years, almost 30 years. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. It wasn't like I just leapt into the Akashic Records. So I tried to get back in television and it just wasn't working. It's so interesting. And now I know, because it was no longer a part of my soul's journey. It was going to be a component to it and and still play a part, but it wasn't. I was supposed to be moving into something else. And so it was through a psychic reading that I had one day, and the psychic saw a being over my shoulder, and she said, he looks like a genie, and he says that he's watching over your Akashic Records. And I said, well, what are those? And she said, I don't know, but that's what he says he does. So I looked up the Akashic Records, went home, looked it up, and didn't hit me over the head like choirs going off, but I felt like I already knew it. And so I didn't leap into it. I kept trying. This is where we don't listen. I kept trying to get back in television, trying different things. I tried to sell reality shows. I tried to create this and that. And so again, struggling, that wasn't working, but I think my ego wasn't ready to let go of that aspect of my life. And so then I was in a metaphysical bookstore in Los Angeles, the Bodhi Tree, and I was in a back room by myself, and there was a book that was called my attention to it. It was sticking off the shelf. And I looked up and I pulled it down, and it was the book How to Read Your Akashic Records by Linda Howe. And I was like, oh my God, okay. I knew I had to read it. Read that, and in that book, she guides us to begin opening our own Akashic Records. So I did. I was hearing blocks of thought that were so profound that were not mine. And I would write them down, and I would go to my wife and say, is this just me? My imagination, she said, she would get emotional and she'd say, this isn't even how you speak. You're tapping into something. So I paid attention. And then I decided to study, with the author of that book, Linda Howe. She has a Center for Akashic Studies outside of Chicago, and she's still teaching. And I took classes and classes and got certifications. And that was it. And the more that I worked in the records, the more I expanded, the more I came to know that I already, or realize that I already knew this. I already know it. I know the reality and power of divine. I just know it. And when I was little in church, in a Catholic church, I do remember feeling a very powerful essence of something loving me. I was like in second grade. And that's why I loved being in church, not listening to a priest, but I loved being in church. And I realize now I already was remembering, as Mary Magdalene would say, I was remembering. I came in with this, and I came in knowing this and knowing the power of divine. And so now my working with the records, my role is to bring this as a tool into our regular lives, because the Akashic Records have been around for a very long time, as different names, the Book of Life in the Bible, the idea of a realm that records everything that a soul has lived, said, and done, has been around since the beginning of time. It's in every culture. It's just called different things. The book of the dead, the Quran's got one, the Buddhism's got a book. There are the different cultures that have this belief system in place about a realm, a space that records everything. So the Akashic Records is just the more modern version. Edgar Cayce was accessing the Akashic Records. So it's been around a long time, and it's very exciting, and I'm still in awe of it, really in awe.
Well, my first question would be, well, who created it and why?
Sure.
Answerable question.
Well, I believe Source created it. Source, universe, creator, God. Because Akasha is a Sanskrit word that means that from which all things are formed. So the idea, from what I understand, now this again is what I'm understanding, and my experience in this is that this began as a blank slate, and that life itself on the planet began as a blank slate, just this blank realm. And as things began to be created on the planet, including humans, as they were created, their activities, their emotions, their thoughts became imprinted, like a spiritual imprint into this field. And so it's quantum, so it's endless, it has no boundaries, it's infinity in a sense. And therefore, with intention and with a knowing, we can access that field and actually access history as long as it was imprinted into the field. So it's pretty trippy. It's, but somehow I just know it to be true.
So, I picture it as like this great library in the sky.
Yes.
And all of these books, endless, and you can just pick any one up and find the information you need. But
Yeah.
I mean, is it really does it take away free will? Is it a guidebook that we could consult? No, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be doing this.
Oh, great question. So no, it does not take away free will. So it is the unfolding. If we could imagine let's just talk about humanity for now, not, animals and trees and things like that. But the unfolding of humanity becomes imprinted, right? And then the reason we would want to access, okay, well, let me actually rewind. There is an idea behind all of this that as souls, we incarnate and reincarnate. We come into each lifetime with a choice that the soul, before it incarnates, Mary Magdalene spoke about this, is making a choice. We're choosing to come into a lifetime. We're not being given some script. We're not being given, here. We're not even being given from the other side. Oh, you do this or that. No, it's the soul makes a choice. And I like to describe it as an overarching theme, like coming in for self-love or coming into um, manifest love to the nth degree, those kinds of ideas. So the soul chooses, I'm coming into this lifetime to do whatever, right? And then the idea is that the soul, that part's fixed because you made the choice to come in this big way. And so you're here. We all have a purpose, and that purpose is the choice we made. Now, how we manifest that is up to us. We have free will. The records never tell us what to do. If I ever got a message, you have to do this or that, I would know I'm not in the Akashic Records. There's none of that. It is, we have absolute free will. So we have free will in how we manifest and carry out that soul's chosen journey or not. We can choose not to. That doesn't mean we're going to do it in the next life. It just means we're choosing not to. What I have found happens, and I've been working with the Akashic Records since 2008, and what I've seen 100% of the time is that when we veer off or away from what our soul has chosen to come here for, we're usually, there are signs that show us we're off. We're not happy. Some people get sick. Things don't work out. And so people come to the records, and from me, to me as a practitioner, of course, with their permission, I open up their records, and what is in their records is the imprint of what their soul chose to do on a grand level, right? And so when they're saying, I don't know, I'm at a fork, should I do this or that? The records don't say do that. The records will give me or impart questions to that person about the things that they're passionate about, the things that they love, the things that come easy to them. Because the things that come easy to us are 100% related to why we're here. We have learned as a culture, well, at least Americans have, that if there's no pain, there's no gain. You're supposed to work hard and be unhappy and stick to a job even though you hate it, and then you retire. And it's like, no, we're not designed for that. We're designed to have joy all the time and to work at, if we're not even, the records like to take the word work out, but that to spend our time with an exchange of value in doing the things that bring us joy. Because when something brings us joy, we're going to expand, and everyone else around us is going to feel that joy. So it is not taking away free will at all. It is actually an imprint of sort of a soul choice that we made, and it already exists in the records. Now, what also exists in the records are past lives, because we are the same soul reincarnating, according to the Akashic realm. And we know that DNA is energy, and we know that energy doesn't die. So that means that we all have the energy of every lifetime that we've lived still with us in our DNA. And this is a trippy one. There's some trippy concepts that have come in that are in my book, and this is one of them that we actually can tap into it. Once we discover a past life, we can tap into an aspect of that past life and use it in the present life in a very positive way, simply by intention and knowing that it is so. Power of intention is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you believe that everything that is created, whether it's, an idea, a book, a film, a business, has its own energy
Yes,
imprint?
it
And,
does. Yeah, it
and
does.
so that's how you can read, the
In
Akashic
order.
Records business. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And especially if it's become manifest already. So if it's an idea still floating around and hasn't become manifest, like from big magic, if it hasn't matched up yet with how it wants to become manifest, then no. But once something becomes manifest on the planet, this is we're not talking about cosmic stuff, but on the planet, that's my understanding. So yes, an organization, a company is already manifest and and it's got a creator founder, and quite often that founder will come to me and they're not sure about something, and maybe the company's not doing well or whatever. It's amazing. If I open the records, I use a sacred prayer, but opening the records of the company, it's a different, I don't want to say personality, but the essence feels different than the person. And they're having a conversation with the essence. And really what they're doing is they're going to remember how that marriage with the essence happened. Because the essence is reminding them basically, this is why we came together. And maybe it's gotten forgotten, or who knows, other players came in to disrupt it, various reasons that they come to the records for their companies. So yeah, and pets too.
So do you find, a lot of people who are psychic say they have to learn to turn it off. But you just said that you say a prayer. Is that the key to opening the records for you? And when you close them, you're not bothered by all this information.
Yes, that is how it's been working for me. Although I do have to say that I'm beginning to hear things about people when I'm not in the records, and my own Akashic record said that would begin to happen. So, but yes. So the prayer for me, it's what Linda Howe was downloaded, the woman who I studied with at the Center for Akashic Studies, and what's activating for me about the prayer, it works for me, is that part of the prayer is to ask the Holy Spirit of light to sort of, and I'm, prevent me, the words are prevent me from all forms of self-centeredness and direct my attention to the work at hand. That's taking my ego, and it's just on another side of the room. It's not with me. And that's my favorite part of the prayer, because I need to be clear and grounded. Otherwise, I'm not going to hear. And so part of that is my ego to be somewhere. Just go somewhere else, go sit down on the couch. And then I don't have any opinions. I don't have, and it's true. I can't. I tried to have an opinion once in someone's reading. I tried in my mind to have an opinion and I couldn't. It was really wild. And I was really happy that I couldn't. So that part of the prayer really works for me. So yes, when I do close the records, I still sometimes I'm learning a little bit more how to just release it. But I do still feel, if somebody has had a lot of rough stuff, I can feel some of it. I'm not taking it on, because it's really the Holy Spirit of light that's taking it and dealing with everything. I'm just the sieve through which it flows through. And so sometimes I will feel a little knocked out, which is why I do not do more than 2 readings in a day. Because I just don't want to load myself up, and I want to be fully present for each person the best that I can. So, I feel it, but I don't feel overwhelmed by it. And eventually I just move back into my integrated self, because my ego comes back in. And then eventually I kind of forget what was in the reading. I just forget.
So
Mhm.
you don't find that businesses would think about, oh, Akashic Records, what is that? more familiar with a psychic, I'll go and see a psychic instead, because I really don't understand this Akashic record thing. I mean, do you come across that?
Do I come across that from other people asking that? Or
Businesses, especially businesses. I can imagine, that some people in business, particularly men, might, because, we're all familiar with psychics. Not everybody is
yeah.
familiar with the concept of the Akashic records. So, do you find that, they find it really hard to understand?
Well, that's a great question. I haven't found it yet. However, there is, a really good distinction between the psychic work and what happens in psychic readings and what happens in Akashic readings. Psychic readings, which are really valuable, are more direct. I want to say one-on-one, but they're more direct to whoever it is you're talking to. I guess, yeah, psychic readings can give overviews as well. But I haven't experienced that yet. If I were asked that, I probably would explain that what is unique about the Akashic Records in terms of a company is that you literally that the company, or rather the Akashic Record, the imprint of that company is coming from the perspective of having already chosen to co-create with that person, that founder, the guy, let's say, the CEO. And so its role is to, it's also a sacred space, is to maintain the sanctity of that relationship. So it's another, I like to say, like, I want to say a higher level, but that sounds judgmental, but it is a higher level because it's a divine level. It's the divine coming together of an idea that then wound up being a company with that person. And I don't know that psychic readings are necessarily always about that.
Mm. How do your, the actors that you've worked with, your former colleagues, presumably you still see some of them. I mean, how do they respond to what you're doing now?
I am out of touch with them, because I'm on a different coast. Most of them are on the West Coast, and a lot of the soap operas are off the air. There's only 3 left. There were 15 when I began working in the 80s. So I'm not. But however, that's also a great question because I will post, let's say, interviews like this with you, and I'll just put it up on my Facebook page, and they respond. And it's like, this is amazing. I love this. Now, no one's done a deep dive about it, but it's always very positive. I think that has more to do with me as being relatable because I am very relatable. And I know that, which is why people do come to me for readings. I am the person that in my book, I talk about all my own personal stuff that I was working through in the Akashic Records so that my journey is an honest example of the power of the Akashic Records. And I put myself out there, in other words. And I've always been that kind of person. I've always been honest and with everyone that I work with. So I think the response is I could be probably doing anything. And those same actors and actresses, I always say they would always be there for me. I had great relationships with them because I stood up for them and they were safe with me. And the networks don't necessarily operate that way. They're operating more, do it fast and let's make the money. We don't have time to deal with an actor that needs help. And I would just defy them and spend time with the actor that needed help.
Yeah. Do you open the Akashic Records for periods of time? Have you looked at the time that we're in?
Yes. I think it's I've just begun to write on Substack. I opened the Akashic Records for the United States of America because the United States of America is an entity and it exists and it was formed. Yeah. And that was very, very telling, for this time right now. I also opened the records for the Middle East, and that was not now. although it wouldn't be much different. And the message for the Middle East, what the message that the Middle East itself as an entity was imparting was, it was showing me people going around, um, so the devastation that's happening, whether it's Gaza, now we have Iran, um, that the choice to make is to create the new collectively and go around. So don't fight against what's happening, but create that new, join hands together, and then we could be more specific, it's kind of what Andrew Harvey talks about, and go around the evildoers in a sense, go around the problem. So then all of a sudden we're in front of it.
Yeah.
And we've created the new. So the Middle East had a lot to say about that. And then the United States it just talked about how it was formed and what it stands for, and that I didn't get a feeling like it's done or over. It was very beautiful. I don't know right now specifically, I can't remember, but it is on my Substack, in my Substack page, that particular reading. I thought I would just offer that out up to everybody. So yeah, I can open up countries. I'm thinking of doing a book on sacred places around the world, because there's hidden knowledge there. And so we know that there are mysteries still to some places, and not the big ones like, the pyramids in Egypt, but the lesser known sacred places on the planet, would be fascinating to just be in that space and open up the Akashic records of that particular address in a sense. Hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting one, a very interesting one.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
Hmm.
Wow. And there's so many other things that can be done with this.
Yeah. Well, look at Edgar Casey. Do you know, I was following Edgar Casey. I was reading his books, especially the one on Atlantis, years ago. And I had no idea until after I had already been studying the Akashic Records that he was actually accessing the Akashic realm during all of those, downloads that he was getting as a medical medium. I always forget that he was a medical medium.
Yeah. Mm.
So,
Yeah.
the idea of a realm that we tap into has been around for quite some time. It's not a new idea. And I think we haven't known so much about it because of the collective ego conscious, and as part of that, the patriarchy.
Mm. Do you teach people how to access the records?
No, I haven't been yet, but I'm going to begin probably doing workshops, where we just can dance with the Akashic records. I did do that. I actually did that once at a Unity in Santa Barbara. I was invited to speak about the Akashic records, and I decided to just have the whole room open their own records using the sacred prayer. And it was very interesting. Some people, will say the prayer and they sit there and they don't get anything. And then some people would hear things, and it's just interesting. Like, why do some people hear it and some don't? There are reasons for that.
Yeah.
It depends on how in balance we are. Do we believe? Do we really know that this exists? Because if we sort of believe it and don't know it, we're not going to hear.
Yeah.
So, and then we need to be in some bit of balance, right? We have to be a little bit balanced. We can't be loaded with trauma because that'll block it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we come to our final question. Takes us back to the beginning, really, of your 10 best list. Steve Jobs loved Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, and famously gave a copy of that book to every person who attended his memorial service. What book would you want to give to people who attend your memorial service?
Oh, wow. Well, I would want to give A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah. Mm.
You
Good
know,
choice.
Yeah, I also found out that just recently I was reading about Madeleine L'Engle again, and that she intentionally wrote her books to resonate with both adults and children. I actually didn't even realize that. And so, that is why I would want everyone to have that book.
Good choice. Mary, thank you for adding your 10 best list of spiritual books to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations.
Thank you.
It's been such fun talking with you.
I know. Same here. I'm so glad to have met you. Thank you.
So looking at Mary's bookshelf and her work side by side, I see a thread running through both mystics who bring the divine into daily life, stories where imagination carries weight, forests that thrive through connection and cooperation. And then there are the Akashic Records, the idea that our lives are part of a much larger coherent pattern. It's not about fantasy or imagination. It's about whether we see our lives as accidental or as part of something purposeful. Which leads me to wonder if your life is part of a larger story, one you chose or at least helped shape, how differently might you look at the chapter you're in right now? Mary Madeiras is a 3-time Emmy Award-winning television director and advanced Akashic Records practitioner. She's the author of The Akashic Way and works with individuals and corporations worldwide, helping people gain clarity around purpose, patterns, and personal growth. For more information, visit her website at theakashicway.com. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. Thanks for watching. Till next time.
If today's conversation sparked your curiosity, you'll love our other shows. The Synergy Sessions, where leading-edge thinkers collide in bold, unscripted dialogues that ignite new possibilities. Between Realms and Reason, where we journey into the mysterious consciousness, energy, and the hidden layers of reality, where science converges with spirit in ways you've never imagined. And the No BS Spiritual Book Club, where leading-edge new thought speakers, teachers, authors, and luminaries who've walked this path before you share the 10 books that had the biggest impact on their life journey. All 3 shows are available on YouTube, Spotify, Substack, and all major podcast platforms. For more information, visit sedgbeer.com. That's SEDGBEER.com.